Okay. Back again. Trying to do this a little more often here. If only to get myself better at it, because I don't know if you guys know this, and you all of you guys do. When you start doing something, you tend to suck at it, right? It's sort of a painful process initially. So, this is true with playing guitar and that kind of thing too. Everybody sucks when they start out, but you gotta work through it. I think it's a Marine saying or something like embrace the suck, something like this. I don't know. So anyway, you get a couple hours into whatever you're doing and you start to gain some competency, and that's kind of the goal, right? Okay. So at any rate, we're back again. It's freezing in here. I think it's like 60 degrees in the house here. I refuse to turn on the heat. It's the end of September, and it's just too early for that. I'm not ready to do that. So at any rate, we're kind of warming up, and want to dig into today's topic. Before we do that, go to more. Pointing over here. See that? See that suck? Pointing over here. Go to morefromdave.com and you're going to get this Harmony in Theory Quick Start Guide that we are going to be referring to today to learn all about exactly that, harmony in theory and how it applies to the guitar. And it's a nice, simple, 10-page packet or so that, goes through the very basics. The very basic, that's all, introduction stuff. That's not important. But all the very basic music theory concepts that you need to know to start applying and understanding all these things to guitar. All these things. Intervals. So major scale, intervals. Harmonizing a major scale up to its triads and seventh chords, how to play them and that kind of thing. And that's where we're going to pick up today. So if you recall yesterday, we left off harmonizing our major scale, the C major scale, to its diatonic intervals, right? And we went through all of them. We went through the thirds, the fourths, the fifths, sixths, sevenths, all that good stuff. Learned how to play them on the guitar neck, which incidentally is a great warm-up. So if I were smart today, I would have spent some time just playing some intervals. Oof. All right, there's some intervals. With little scale runs and that kind of thing, because it's fun and it warms your hand up. All right. So today we're going to go one step farther. We're going to take our intervals and we're going to stack one more note on top of them. So specifically the thirds, right? So we had the thirds. I took each note of the scale, treated it as its own root note, and stacked a third on top of it. We found out we ended up with a variety of qualities with these intervals. So major, minor, minor, major, major, major. No, sorry. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor. I've got a buzzing in my ear here. Let's get rid of that. So from there, I can take another third interval. We'll jump right into it. Triads. I can stack another third on top of this series of third intervals that I created yesterday. So when I do that, I end up with the smallest unit that I can now call a chord. Finally, we can get to something called a chord, right? When you play, say, like a lot of guitar players in particular, when they play a power chord, sort of a misnomer to call that a chord, right? Because that's just an interval. That's a fifth interval. It's only two notes. I don't care how many times you stack those notes. You could play the octave up here, C, G, C. You could play that up here. It's all an interval, or a series of intervals, right? It's not really a chord yet until we add this third note. So I have my third interval, C to E, that's a major third, and then I stack another third on top of my E note, and I get a G. So that's a minor third above the E. When I look at the the sum of all of this, so the distance between C to G, I end up with the perfect fifth. And so I play these all together. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play my little third. Come back over here. I'll play my third interval that was C to E, right? Third fret on the A string to the second fret on the D string. I'll do that, and then I'll add my open G to the top of that, and now I have a little C major triad. Coming back over here, I have this scene in here queued up for something else, so we'll talk about that later. So it's now the smallest unit. I can call it a chord. Pretty good. So I can do that now, just like I did with the thirds way up here. Remember, we started on each new note of the scale. We ended up with all these different third intervals. And what's interesting is I can take each one of these. I can now make a chord out of them. I'll end up with 7 unique chords. And anytime a perfect fifth, the combination of a major third and a minor third, ends up on top of my series here, I'm just going to take whatever the quality of the third was, major or minor, and that's now my triad. So for example, I had a major third on my C, I added a perfect fifth on top, therefore I have a major triad. I'll do that again with my D note. So I've got a D, I'll add a third on top, that's an F note, I'll add the perfect fifth on top of that. It's diatonic to the scale. And I'll end up with a minor triad because my initial third was a minor. So same thing on the third degree of the scale. So the E note goes up to G, that's my initial third, it's a minor. And then I add a perfect fifth on top, it's from the scale, a B note, I end up with an E minor triad. So we have major, minor, minor on the third degree. Here comes a F major on the fourth degree. G major on the fifth degree. There's A minor. And now here's where the exception is. So B to D, that was a minor triad. And if you remember from harmonizing the scale in fifths yesterday, when we worked through that when I got to B, the fifth above was F. And so that is not a perfect fifth. That's a diminished fifth. And so that diminished quality is now going to take over my chords. So now I have a diminished triad on the 7th degree of the scale, B diminished. That equals a minor third from B to D, and then another minor third from D to F, and that's a diminished fifth on the outside. So there we are. And then you can resolve that to C up an octave. So now we've got these 7 triads. We refer to each one of them in Roman numerals. You can see the Roman numerals up on top. You probably learned that in grade school and never used them again except for Rocky movies, but we use them again in music theory to refer to chords and their degree in a particular key signature or scale. So you'll also notice that each chord with a major third, each major chord is going to get an uppercase Roman numeral. Every chord with a minor third in it, including our diminished at the very end, is going to get a lowercase Roman numeral, and that's how we distinguish between the two when we're just talking about chord progressions, for example, in Roman numerals. So some people call that the Nashville number system. More on that later. So for now, the big takeaway is to memorize the order in which these triads occur, these chords. So major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished at the end. So that's a major. 2 minors in a row, 2 majors in a row, another minor, and a diminished at the end. So that's important. And here's one way, for those of you who are inclined to play single note stuff, here's one way that I might go about practicing this. And I love doing this because, I learned this early on, and it's always been a fun exercise. So let's take our triads, our little 3-note triads, and let's turn it into a 4-note arpeggio. So by that I mean we're going to repeat a note. right, to make a 4-note melodic pattern out of it. And I'll start on a C triad. I'll start with the G note that we end up with. We'll make that an 8th note. There we are. And I'll come down, oops. That's not a G note. There's a G note. Good. All right, here's my 3 notes. I'm repeating the highest note over here, and then jumping down to the C. Oops, there's my E, and then here's my G again. So it's gonna sound like this. Here's my little pattern. Easy, right? I'm lifting up each one of my fingers after I'm done with the notes here, because I don't necessarily want it to be, it's a single note technique, right? So I don't want them all to ring out together. I need to tune this thing, God. If I can pull my tuner up, get this pedal board down here. There we go. Jeez. It's the cold. It's the temperature. Everything's changing. This is what happens when you live in the upper Midwest, right? We live in Wisconsin, and right about now, the weather will wreak havoc on all your instruments, particularly if you don't have a finish. Right? So this is my, for anybody who's interested, this is my Koa Strat. It is made of solid Koa. And I put this together, it's a Warmoth, right? So I put it together probably in 2003. And man, it needs a little love as far as the setup goes. I think it's an awesome guitar. I mean, I've had it for going on 20 years now, so, you know, I'm not getting rid of it anytime soon. But right now, at least, this is why, incidentally, you don't own more than, you know, well, do what you want, but I don't own more than, how many guitars do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get another 1, 2 at work. So, yeah, I don't own much more than, how many did I just count? 7? I don't know. If you own any more than that, you become the curator of a collection. And you can't, you know, unless you spend all your weekends maintaining these things. And I do setup work, and I do repairs and all this stuff, and I put stuff together, I wire it. It's fine. But, you know, holy hell, I've got a kid and a wife and a couple of dogs, and I can't spend all my time in the shop downstairs cranking on guitars. So, anyway, all that to say, I don't want to own many more guitars that, you know, I have to maintain, and, you know, everything here needs a setup. It's late September in Wisconsin. Of course everything needs a setup. Okay, so that rant aside, here's our little C major chord, and I'll put a, you know, chord symbol up above it. Good. Next, I'm going to move everything up 1 note in the scale. So we're going to go to the next chord. We found out earlier that it's a D minor. So I'll start on my A note. I'm starting on the 5th of the chord. And now I get this little D minor arpeggio. So there we go. Now I've got 2 little arpeggios that I can play. The first chord of the key, the C major, and the second. So the C major, D minor. This is good for me today because I need to warm up. It's cold. What's next? E minor. Let's try it. So there's my B note that I'll start on. E, G, B. Cool. All right, now I've got 3 of them. While I do this, I'm thinking about the chord, the name of the chord. That's C major, D minor, E minor, back to D minor. There's my C major. I could sequence these things. F major is next. I'll come over here. There's my F. There's my A. I'm going to keep going. G major, there's a G, there's a B, there's a D. all you guys that are on the email list, morefromdave.com, are going to get a copy of this, so you too can practice this stuff. There's my A minor. One of my favorite exercises. Oops, label that. Okay, last one, B diminished. Where's my B note up here? I can't think once I get above the 12th fret. There's my 16th fret, that's the B note. Then we'll put the 15th fret over here and 13, B diminished. And then I'll go back to C major. You don't want to end on the B diminished. That is your, you don't want to leave it hanging out there. That's, ooh, dead spot. See what I'm talking about? A little buzz there. See. All right. We'll break this up so it's looks reasonable. There we go. Get rid of this so you can see all of it. And I bet my stupid head is in the way. Let's take a look. No, we're good. Pretty good. I'm gonna get rid of myself real quick on the screen so you can see the entire thing. All right, there's our exercise. My favorite little triad exercise. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. There we go, and back to C major. So, just alternate picking. There we go. All right. So it's fun to mess around with. I have tons of fun doing that. Warming up. So, I hear the garbage truck outside. That's what that noise is. God. All right. So, chances are, when you play, say, a song in the key of C major and, say, an F chord comes around, you're not going to jump to this voicing. What is a voicing? So a voicing is the arrangement of the notes in these chords. So far, we've played all of these in what we call root position. That means the root note is the lowest note in the voicing, and then you play the the thirds above it, so the third and the fifth. Chances are you're not going to do that for a multitude of reasons. On the guitar, at least, we have a range that sounds best, right? And so that sounds a little muddy. It may sound better to try to take advantage of some of the lower notes and the higher notes that we have access to. You can, like I said before, you can repeat these notes in any combination, and it's still, say, an F major chord. So I can play these. You can mix up the notes over here, and it's still going to be an F major. So let's use that to our advantage. You can repeat those notes as many times as you want as well. So if we use that to our advantage, there are a couple of common, where's my packet? Here it is. Most of you have probably seen these before. So if I use that to my advantage, we have a couple of common voicings that we arrive at for the guitar that we'll want to know. So here it is. So I've got a C major chord, and if I play that over here, this is one of the first things you ought to have learned, right? So if you're learning theory and that kind of thing, I take it that you're probably well versed in some of these cowboy chords over here. Here's the D minor. But maybe you didn't know how they were all related. So here's my A minor. Here's a B diminished. That's less common. And then I'll resolve to C, right? So that B diminished, again, if we're going to assign, let's say we assign descriptors to these chord qualities, just for reference. Major chords tend to sound happy, triumphant, that whole thing. Minor chords are moody, sad, that type of thing. I always think of diminished as being, it's the villain tying the girl to the railroad tracks kind of sound. That. And it's unstable. You don't want to sit there. That's why we didn't sit there during the exercise. You don't want to just sit there. It's leaves everybody kind of tense, sort of. It's not resolved. So dissonant. Anyway, there we go. You can also play these, and I wrote these out in the tab here, and I'll include. Let me find my. Oops. Let me hit the mic. That would be good. Let me include my movable chord sheet so you can see kind of what's going on here. Man, there's going to be a lot of editing to do on this to get a couple of clips out of it where I'm not scatterbrained. But how are we doing over here? Excellent connection. Excellent. That's excellent. So, all right. So you can also take these and it's a beautiful thing about guitar. If you know a couple of voicings, if you know a couple of what we can call bar chords, or if you, I just think of them as movable chords. I'm not always barring. Barring is the technique, right? Holding down multiple strings with a single finger. But if I know a few of these, let me just create a scene real quick. If I know a few voicings, I can... If I know a few of these voicings, I can take them and I can move them around the neck. And, stringed instruments, guitar in particular, are very... They're very convenient. Let's try to do this on the fly here. I didn't plan on bringing this page up, but since we're here, anyway, let me get a thought out. Okay, so yes, stringed instruments are very convenient transposing instruments because I can take the same fingering and I can move it around. As opposed to piano, where I need a new fingering for each new chord, unless I'm playing in the key of C or something, because then I can just take my hand and just put it in a little triad position and then just move it around like a monkey and do that. But us guitar players, we're monkeys all the time. Let's see. I need a window capture? Is that what I want? Okay, and then let my voice go up like an octave. Okay. Welp. It's my own ineptitude here. Image. Display capture. Oh boy. I think we ought to abort this whole situation here. God damn. All right. So let's see. All right. Yeah. Well, I'll include it. There's a... God, I keep going to that thing. All right. I'll include it. There's a form here, or a sheet that outlines all of these types of chords. And there's really... there's no real trick to it. It involves learning the notes up and down, the E string and the A string, and then learning these two forms. There's one, there's another one, right? Both major chords. You can make them both minor. And, okay. So I'll include that along with the email at some point, and maybe we'll talk about it more when I come back. But for now, all right, we've got this collection of chords. We found out that the major scale yields us 7 unique chords. They go in a particular order. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Right? This is where chord progressions come from, and I mentioned earlier that these now get Roman numerals. Let's go back up here. These now get Roman numerals. And so this is where chord progressions come from. What is a chord progression? That's just a series of chords. A series of chords played in a song, something like this. And so what's a common one? Well, how about a 1-4-5 chord progression? That would involve playing the 1 chord of the key. In this case, that would be C. We're in the key of C here. So the 1 chord would be my C major. The 4 chord would be the F major. That's the 4th chord in the key. It's also major. And then the 5 chord would be the G. So if somebody talks about doing that, if they call out at a jam session 1-4-5 in the key of C, you know exactly what the chords are because you know all this stuff. So something like that. Or 2-5-1. What would that be? That would be the D minor. Going to the 5 chord, the G, and then moving over to the C, the 1 chord. 1-6-4-5, I don't know. So how about the C chord going to the 6 chord? So the 1 chord, the C, goes to the 6 chord, the A minor. Then you go to the 4 chord, the F, and then up to the 5 chord, the G. There we go. Anyway, so what did we have there? We had just to recap briefly here, get all my windows straight. We just built a bunch of triads. We built the C major chord by taking our 3rd interval, stacking that on top of the C note from the C major scale, and then stacking a 5th on top of that. That yields us, again, the smallest unit that I can now call a chord, a C major chord, a triad. We did that to each new note of the scale, treating each new note as its own root note, and that yields us 7 different chords. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. And we took that, we played a fun little exercise with it. That'll be sent along to the email list. Let's see, where am I here? Let's find our exercise. Here it is. That I desperately need to warm up. Again, play these, play backwards. Mess around with them, maybe just loop a couple of chords. So how about like the first 3? How about C major, D minor, E minor, and then back. Nope. I love that exercise. You get to know the that harmonized scale, those triads really well. Doing all of that stuff. And then we found out that we have voicings. So I can play these chords in these notes, the notes in these chords in any order, and as many times as I want to capitalize on the range of the instrument. That diminished chord is not falling into place.
It's 1 o'clock.
So there we go. I can play these voicings, and these chords become much more usable on guitar, right? So we learned the voicings, we learned the triads, all this good stuff. I think that about does it for today. We're going to talk more about triads, though. It's one of my favorite topics. And hopefully this all comes through well enough. So, until then, talk to you soon.